Amy Forman, it is so good to see you here on my YouTube channel. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very well. So I asked you to come on here to talk about something that you had shared in a YouTube live in a comment
Hmm.
that you had had an issue at a tarot party that you
Hmm.
recovered from beautifully. And so to set this up, Amy and I are both tarot professionals. Amy does a lot more parties than I do now, but I used to do a lot of parties. And tarot parties are wild. If you want a party, reach out to us. We'd love to help you. But weird things can happen. Amy, tell us what happened most recently for you.
All right. So the setup for my experience is that I was referred and contacted by an entertainment agent, and she had let me know that she was looking for a tarot reader. She was not happy with the person she had been using, and she had this event coming up in like a month. So plenty of notice for this. I was, excited about the opportunity. Events are totally my bread and butter. That's kind of my specialty and where I feel like I shine the most as a tarot professional. So great communication. We planned, everything beautifully. We communicated more throughout the weeks as the gig approached, and everything was right on. So, day of the event, I had a lovely morning, no complaints. Um, and I began to get ready as I usually do for my event. I first packed my suitcase, and then I did my makeup and picked out my costume and got all ready, made sure I had a meal in my tummy and snacks for the road and everything I need. I'm a Taurus, so I like all my little things to feel good. I have my celery juice or my electrolyte drink, or maybe I want a little caffeine. So I'm ready in my mind. But when I get driving west to east, because this party is east and I'm west, I get all the way east. It's southeast, in fact. Um, and as soon as I'm about to get on the interstate, like light bulb, I'm like, I didn't put my suitcase in the car. I knew in that moment it's sitting right by the front door.
The
It
whole
is not in the car
suitcase.
with me. It wasn't even the whole thing. It
Oh
wasn't
my
even
God.
like, did I put it in the car? It was just like, I did not. I knew I didn't. And so my heart starts racing immediately. I'm about to get on the interstate. I call the agent because I'm like, I'm totally all about this. Like, if you screw something up, accidents happen, you do whatever you can do to make it right. Right. So I call the agent and I'm like, this is where I'm at. I'm set to arrive right at call time. She's like, oh, you don't start till this time. I was like, yeah, but I'm far from home. And I said, I'm just going to make an emergency stop and get a tarot deck. And she's like, where do you get a tarot deck? Like, so quickly. And I'm like, I got this. Like, I can think of a spot. I know it's there. And so she's like, okay. So then I call up this, I Google it. They're going to close in 14 minutes. So I'm like 15 minutes away. So I call them and I'm like, will you wait for me? I have a tarot deck emergency. Will you wait for me? They say they'll wait for me. Plug it into my GPS, get on the interstate, and I'm like flying. And I'm thinking to myself that, oh, wow, works out great because this gig is actually much closer to the spiritual store than I thought. So that should be perfect as I'm watching my GPS and following it. By the time I get into downtown traffic, it is now that I realize I have been navigating to the original GPS sent to the gig, not to the spiritual store. So, but both navigations are going because one is Google Maps and one is Apple Maps. So they're both going at the same time. So,
No, no. I'm like breaking out in a sweat just hearing this story. Oh my
yes.
gosh.
So at this point in time, I am supposed to start readings in like 22 minutes. And so now I navigate the GPS and to the spiritual store. I am now 16 minutes away from the spiritual store. They're still waiting for me. I call them. I'm like, will you still wait for me? Like, this is what happened. They're like, no problem. We'll wait for you. Drive safe. Then I like make two or three wrong turns. Like, at this point, I want so badly to fix it. And I just keep taking wrong turns, like wrong directions, and my orientation in space. I'm full tripping now. I am in a psychedelic universe. So then as I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's no way I can make it. Okay, so as my personal tarot reader, you know very well that I have an extreme fear of social rejection, of being perceived as to be in the wrong or deceitful or inappropriate. I don't want the community around me to like eyes on me. You know, I can't deal with it. So I'm in full panic mode, driving, just driving at this point. I'm just on A1A, driving north, panicking. Call my husband. Ugh, this is what's happening. I let like a single tear roll down my cheek as to not like mess my makeup. So I like tell my husband, I'm just like, I'm coming home. Like at this point, I'm in full flight mode. I'm running away from this situation. I don't want to be faced with this. So then the agent is calling me. I'm rejecting her phone calls, trying to catch my breath, calling my husband, telling him I'm bailing on this. And he's like, I'm proud of you, whatever you need to do. And I'm like, okay. So then I like make a turn. I look at my phone. The agent has sent me a message. She says, I have a tarot deck. Just come. I have a tarot deck. Just come. Multiple messages. So I made a turn east or west because I'm going home at this point. So I turned west and now I'm stuck at a drawbridge. So I'm stuck at a drawbridge. I'm seeing my phone. She says I have a tarot deck. And then all of a sudden, like the symbol of the drawbridge, like as my resistance to having this experience, I'm just like sitting with it and looking at it and breathing. And then like it starts to lower. And like as the drawbridge lowers, I just start to like let go of control. So then I just like, at this point, I'm like I'm in that kind of like haze of like, I'm just coming down from a full panic attack. And I've surrendered at this point. And so I'm just like, okay, I'll be there soon. And so I didn't even text my husband again. So I'm just like trying not to agitate myself, coming back down the road. She says she has a tarot deck. I'll start a little late, like no big deal. So then I get to the gig and she hands me the tarot deck and it's like this, like a couple of cards.
Recognizing that a tarot deck for real, for those who don't know, 78 cards, looks like this.
Right.
Looks like this, right?
But at the same time, at this point, I'm in the space of surrender. And I'm happy to tell you that I was able to maintain that the rest of the night. Like I kind of hit that like peak of like maximum, just like wanting to control the situation, wanting to control how I'm perceived by people. And once that like broke or once that softened, I was able to kind of like go into this, afterburn. I don't know. So I walked in there, they hand me a little deck and I'm just like, I just flip over and I'm like, it's Rider-Waite-Smith. Like I have some Rider-Waite-Smith cards. It maybe would have even been better to have like a playing card deck at this point, because then I would have had like 4 whole suits and royals. But it was a magician's deck.
How many cards did you like? What was it really?
10 cards. So the magician used this deck for a trick, basically, and he had 10 cards, mostly wands. I can tell you for sure, I had the king, queen, knight, and page of wands for sure. We had the 10 of wands and the 9 of wands for sure. The 2 of cups, the ace of cups. And I think I want to say the 4 of cups, and I think the king of pentacles. So maybe it's a trick with a story about a fiery love connection with maybe options. I don't know. But, and two queen of wands, in fact, not 1, but 2. And so I found that out because the very first reading that I did was for the owner of the club. And so he sat down and I pulled 3 cards and 2 of them were queen of wands reversed. And I think the third one was maybe like a 4 of cups reversed. And then, so I'm not sure about the third one, but I remember what I did say to him was something along the lines of, sometimes in life we are presented to perfectly wonderful options, to sort of comparative options, but just because we have options presented to us doesn't mean we necessarily should choose either of them. Maybe this is a been there, done that thing. Maybe we want something fresh and new. And he resonated with the reading. And then I was like off and running and I just proceeded to use these 2 cards. And I did like 2-3 card readings for a line of people for the next 3 hours because I like worked overtime to try to like please my agent and just basically finished the line.
So, hearing it's good to hear that story for me because I have some similar stories. I mean, I don't think you get through a career doing this without some of these stories. My mother was a theater student, and she said the most important thing she learned as a theater student is it doesn't matter if you screw up, it matters how you fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly you fixed it. And I mean, there's so many pieces to this story because, like, brand new agent, like the worst. Have this happen with a brand new agent, you're trying to prove yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the whole spiral that we get into where we make our problems worse
Mm-hmm.
by making mistakes because we're already freaked out,
Yeah.
and then showing up and doing the job and getting the job done and being a good reader.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
So,
interesting to watch my kind of state of consciousness like shifting like throughout the night. And so then in the aftermath, there's been like a lot of, oh my gosh, like I was like cruel to myself in that headspace. I was so hard on myself for like screwing this thing up. And it's just like in the aftermath, I was just like, gosh, why? Like, it's no big deal. Like, so you're late to something, like ever. Like, so, so there's been like a lot of that type of reflection. And then there's been like I get it, like in the professional dynamic of the whole situation, like, it can be very,
well,
you need to sharpen on it.
I feel like, just to be a tarot professional, there is so much of the world that doesn't want to put those two words together.
Mm-hmm.
Our own tarot world, there are many people in our tarot world that feel like tarot professionals should not exist. I don't like
Mm-hmm.
people, but they exist.
Yeah.
And then the people in the non-tarot world who feel like they don't understand the value that we bring.
Yeah.
So when we show up as professionals, we want to have our tools with us.
Yes.
Right?
At least a tarot deck. She was like, just read palms. And I'm like, I don't read palms. Like, I'm not trained in that. I would, that's another thing, I work with magicians and mentalists, and they're like, love to get together and talk techniques. And I'm like, hey, man, I don't have techniques. I just know tarot, so I just read tarot. So I'm not a bullshit artist, I'm a tarot reader specifically.
Right.
And, there's that misconception too, even from agents. If you can read tarot, surely you're a medium and a palm reader and, everything else, these are all different disciplines that take years of training.
And that is such an interesting thing because yes, 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 yes. And all respect to those of us who have training in those particular fields. But I would also say, in a way, they're not wrong. I mean, yes, they're totally wrong and ridiculous, but in a way, they're
Yeah.
not wrong, proven by the fact that you were given 9 cards and 1 duplicate,
Mm-hmm.
read for a cattle call for 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah. And every reading was different.
and
It's
you
like
were,
this idea. So I read reversals. So I had 20 different card opportunities. And then like how, when you do 2 and 3 card pulls, how many different combinations are there? But then when you like calculate in the individual person's aura and energy that they're bringing, like how those interpretations, how many different ways can you interpret one card? Like there was a lot going on there. It was definitely an evening with the suit of fire for sure.
I think that speaks a lot to your skill, not only as an entertainer, but as a tarot reader, being able to do that. Um, but I think, like, I mean, have you ever had the experience of doing a great reading and then realizing 2 or 3 cards were still in the box?
Oh, definitely.
Right?
Or 8 were at home where I had a reading yesterday and just didn't put them back in because I wanted to contemplate it more.
Right? Right? So, I mean,
Yes.
tarot is magical in so many ways, and I think that's
Yes.
one of them.
Yeah, and that's when I sat down, I was just like, my guide knows how many cards I'm working with because my process is that I'm communicating with my familiar guide who's communicating with your spirit guide that's hovering around and passing the information. This makes me much less tired. I only have to work with like one energy all night long. So there's that like comfort of going into a reading situation. And you're right that I can do readings without a tarot deck. I'm not going to say I'm reading palms because I'm not trained again in palmistry, but I realized that the first time I did lip print readings where I was like, oh, I just need a launching off point, really,
Mm-hmm.
which is practiced through tarot. You know, I didn't practice that art independent of tarot, but through my tarot practice, that intuitive skill naturally, you know, developed.
Yeah, and that is the thing. I mean, and as we have so much fun with like charm reading and junk reading, like the idea
Yeah,
that you can read things that don't have designated meanings.
right.
So I think there's a lot here that is it's fun because we all experience this. And it is so heartbreaking and upsetting when it happens. So I
Mm-hmm.
can match your story. Let me give you a story.
Okay.
This is a hurricane story. Back when I had, like, I just left my office on Parkway,
Okay. Yes.
but I'll tell you what caused me to get into that office. The office I had before, and you had been to see me in that office before, the pink building,
Yes.
a hurricane was coming. And I had until this moment that I'm now working from a home office sometimes, I had the strict separation of home and work.
Mm-hmm.
Did not have my tarot decks at home, tarot decks at work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the hurricane is coming, and I'm going to the office to get my tarot decks to be able to go to my mother-in-law's house where we're all hunkering down, and I'm going to be working from home, doing
Mm-hmm.
readings with the places where there are no hurricanes, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm still working.
Yeah.
And I've got clients booked. I'm ready to go. I just have to go get my tarot decks. I get there. The landlord has already boarded up the door.
Mm.
There's no way I can get in to get my decks. I have readings. I literally have no access to my cards. What do I do? You know those little keychains that are the smallest deck in the world? They're a little plastic keychain,
Yeah. Yeah. I've had one.
tiny
They're
little
so
universal
cute.
weight. I had
Yes.
those.
Perfect. That's all you need.
My clients were not aware I was working with a mini, mini, mini deck, but I managed for like the 3 days that storm situation was
Yeah.
that.
I bet you bonded with that little deck too.
And I will tell you, I ended up putting it in a plastic bag. I would have preferred like a beautiful pouch as we do, but I was at my mother-in-law's house.
Mm-hmm.
I got a big plastic bag, put him in the plastic bag, and was just like pulling him out of the bag. And it was
Mm-hmm.
kind of cool. Like I liked the energy. I liked the way it worked.
Yeah. Right, because it felt like living and it felt like, yeah, that kind of like freedom of like, oh, it doesn't have to be just so that spirit's communicating all the time. And if spirit needs to use a grocery bag and a tiny deck, like no big deal, you know. We like make we get it, it's our attachments, you know, to
There it is.
just
That's the lesson.
our comfort zone.
And I think it's interesting when you were talking about the drawbridge and how like you were able to find symbolism in that. I
Mhm.
mean, isn't it true that we learn so much in this practice of being professional readers that every messed up thing that happens does ultimately give us some kind of growth or some kind of lesson, I think.
Mm. Yeah, because we learn to see. It's almost like the same as like a 2D artist. Like the practice of drawing and painting is really a practice of learning to see. And this is true. Also, we're learning to see energy patterns and those messages, those opportunities. Yeah,
Right.
and then you can't turn it off. This is making me think of a quote. I can't remember who the quote is, but it's about the spiritual path, you know. And I think it's like a Buddhist monk, let's say. He says, better never begin. Once begun, better finish. Like you
Mhm.
can't you can't escape the wisdom that you've earned. And you
Oh,
got to keep going. Hmm.
perfect. So overall, it's November. That means we just got done with all our Halloween parties. How was your Halloween party season?
It was pretty low key. I definitely had jobs that I was thrilled about. I declined jobs that didn't quite sit comfortably with me. The idea of them wasn't feeling great. You know, it was good. I have a nice repeat client that I'm doing like Halloween and New Year's Eve with, and I'm really enjoying that, you know, familiar faces like every time, and they love me and they pay me well. And so it's just nice. You know, when I worked Halloween, I was like, okay, so New Year's Eve, and they were like, yeah. And so I'm just like, okay, like that's taken care of. I don't have to bid, you know, 50 things for New Year's Eve until I get the right, you know, offer. So yeah, I am pleased. I'm teaching a lot of yoga right now, which is kind of where the energy is shifting. Because generally the entertainment industry is slow across the board, every act. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that is so interesting. I don't like you do a lot of the big agent parties. I used
Mm-hmm.
to do that. I don't do that as much because it's a lot.
It is.
But
I'm
I do
tired.
it for younger people like you.
Yeah, I'm like
Um,
just getting to the point that I want to be choosier and I want to work the gigs I want to work and I don't want to, because usually it's just like it doesn't matter if the gigs are stacked on top of each other. You might have 10 days where there's no gigs. So you have to kind of say yes. And there's like a lot of that
mhm.
madness. I don't want to do like 3 gigs a day anymore.
I totally hear that. I have one Halloween party that I do every year, same Halloween party, and it is so cool
Yeah.
because like they know you, and at that point, like you're not having to stand on ceremony at all. They just know when they come to that party, they're going to talk to you, and that's part of what
Yeah.
they're going to do at the party. And it is such a delight. Such
Yeah, it does. It feels like embraced by the community. It feels like you have like a role there, you know, and that you're
a
appreciated for your skill set. More of that.
Mm. And that was really like my primary party career has always been sort of not so much the agents or the big parties, but the house party. I
Mhm.
started in the 90s and the home demonstration parties were huge in the 90s.
Right, right.
And so I worked I worked more pampered chef parties than you could imagine.
Mm, that's so fun.
Party light, but the most fun were the passion parties, the sex toy parties.
Oh, for
I
sure.
worked a ton of those. Oh my gosh,
Cool.
so fun. So that's how I started out. So I did a lot of those, and I ended up having families that would have me twice a year, every year for 20 years. It was like that. Now, when I go back to Connecticut, they still see me, and it's like I'm just going to my room. Like I know where they're going to put me. I
Yeah,
know how it's going to be. I was like, I'm just going to my office now, and
yeah. Yeah,
it's
there's
a
like
nice feeling. It
cutouts.
really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So speaking of teaching yoga. We have StarCon coming up in January. And of course, last year you taught lip print reading,
Mhm.
and people were delighted with that. And also party readings as a tarot
Mhm.
professional. What are you doing at StarCon this year?
So this year I'm going to be facilitating yoga experiences. I think it's going to be a good fit and provide like a good transition. When we're learning so much, you know, it's very swords energy going on. So with a nice yoga practice, we're going to be able to like, you know, assimilate this like into ourselves a little bit, like help us kind of process some of the information, help us tune in with our body and let our physical body and energetic body receive the healing of the space, you know, and receive the love that the people are bringing. Because I think that StarCon really is a community of, you know, of supporting one another and accepting and appreciating one another. And so sometimes we need some slow down and deep breathing to just let it all in.
Perfect. Well said. And this year at StarCon, we're having a special room designated for those kinds of experiences. We're doing yoga, we're doing seances, we're doing some musical stuff, some dance stuff in there. Oh my gosh, it's going to be so fun. So good. So, thank you so much for coming here to have this conversation.
Mhm.
For those people who are thinking about being tarot professionals, parties is not the only thing to do. There's a lot of ways to work as a tarot professional. And what we've discovered here today is there's a lot of different ways to do parties. What do you see for your future? Do you see yourself continuing to do parties, working with agents? What are you thinking in your?
I'll do parties probably every, you know, year of my life on this
Yep.
planet. Like why wouldn't I, you know, like who doesn't always need some couple $100s from time to time. But I also really enjoy the experience. I love that I get to be many people's very first experience with tarot, that I get to introduce them to tarot, because there's between like Hollywood and religion, like there's so many misconceptions to tarot. And that's kind of one of my missions, is to like, give people positive, non-threatening experiences working with tarot or playing tarot. Like we don't have to, so a lot of people come and they're like, I'm scared. They like sneak up and I'm like, oh my gosh, come please, like sit with me. It's gonna be fine. So I'll always do parties. I just don't want to feel like I have to do parties. I at one time I was perfectly content. I loved parties. That is what I wanted to do. But now I want to do other things too. I've done a lot of parties.
Yeah. I do fewer now, for sure, for sure.
Sure.
So I will look forward to seeing you at StarCon, and thank you so much for sharing the story that you shared. That when you shared it, just made my stomach drop to the floor, because been there, done that on more than one occasion.
Mm-hmm.
But the upshot is spirit will speak.
Mm-hmm.
And even if we don't have our favorite tools, we will find a way.
That willing spirit,
Yeah, there it is.
That's how my tarot professionalism began. It was with a spirit of willingness because I was scared. That makes me think, I think it's going around on social media right now that if you're doing bravery right, it often feels like fear.
It's beautiful. All right. With that, tell people, if they want a party with you, where do you work and how can they reach you?
So I'm available for private events or corporate events, weddings, birthday parties, mitzvahs, all over the South Florida area. I will work from Orlando to the Keys to Naples and everything in between. And I'm on Instagram at GoGo Yogini, GoGoYogini, and that's a great place to get in touch.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you so much, Amy. Happy holidays.
Thank
We'll
you.
see
You
at
too.
StarCon.
Yes.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Bye.